Peace be upon you all. After the tensions between Russia and Ukraine throughout 2022, the whole world has been on high alert. With every new development in the war between them, discussions begin about the potential damage that could happen if Russia goes completely mad and actually uses a nuclear weapon. But what's even stranger is that, if you follow the experts' discussions, you'll notice that their greatest fear isn't the nuclear explosions themselves, but rather the aftermath of these explosions. One of the most terrifying scenarios scientists worry about is a nuclear winter. So, what exactly is a nuclear winter? Why are scientists more afraid of it than the nuclear explosions themselves? And could it really wipe out humanity? Welcome, I'm Alex, and before we dive in, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest videos. There's no doubt about the power and horror of nuclear weapons. If some lunatic decides to use them, the explosion will be devastating, wiping out buildings, infrastructure, and of course, people, animals, and plants. But as horrifying as the initial explosion is, its impact isn't as dangerous as the radiation it leaves behind. For example, the infamous Hiroshima bomb killed around 80,000 people in the first moments. But over the next 5 years, the death toll rose to 340,000. The deadly radiation left behind by the bomb is the second phase of the horror of nuclear weapons. And as you can see from the numbers, this phase is far deadlier than the first. But perhaps the most overlooked aspect, something that thankfully has never happened before, is the third phase of nuclear weapons devastation, the nuclear winter. First of all, a nuclear winter doesn't require a nuclear weapon to be dropped on a specific city to kill tens of thousands of its residents. It's possible for a nuclear strike in Europe to cause deaths in the rest of the world's continents. Secondly, and this is the bigger problem, if such a catastrophe were to occur, the death toll wouldn't be in the tens or hundreds of thousands. We would be talking about hundreds of millions. In fact, to be blunt, a nuclear winter could lead to the extinction of life on Earth. You might think we've answered the question of this episode, but if you pay attention, you'll notice we've only been speaking in terms of possibilities. Even among experts, there's a lot of disagreement on this matter. But, generally speaking, in all cases, the death toll would be astronomical, possibly reaching into the billions. However, the issue of wiping out humanity and all living creatures almost entirely is something that requires a bit more explanation. So, let's start by understanding what a nuclear winter is and what it can do. In a nutshell, a nuclear winter is the environmental destruction that would result from multiple nuclear explosions. Pay attention to the word multiple. A nuclear winter can't happen from 1, 2, or even 3 bomb detonations. For it to occur, God forbid, a full-scale nuclear war would have to take place, with countries using dozens of bombs from their nuclear arsenals. In this scenario, massive use of nuclear weapons would saturate the atmosphere with dust, smoke, and combustion products. The entire atmosphere would be filled with a gigantic cloud of particles, blocking or significantly weakening sunlight. And that's where the term nuclear winter comes from, because in this scenario, there would be no sunlight. Now you might be wondering, how many explosions would it take to reach such a catastrophic state? This is exactly the question that has puzzled scientists since the Hiroshima explosion. In the early years after World War II, before the development of powerful computers capable of complex simulations, scientists had differing opinions on the number of explosions needed to cause a nuclear winter and the destructive impacts it would have. They made assumptions based on what they knew and relied on examples of massive volcanic eruptions that had changed the climate in their regions, like the 1815 eruption in the United States, which led to snowstorms in July, or the 1883 eruption of Krakatoa in Indonesia, which lowered global temperatures by 1 degree Celsius. Back then, Many theories tried to predict the potential impacts of a nuclear winter, but when computers advanced and we could rely on them for simulations, the picture became much clearer. Scientists started feeding computers with all the information they had, and the computers began generating accurate forecasts for what could happen. For example, two NASA scientists, Alan Robock and Brian Toon, ran a computer simulation to discuss the climatic effects of a small nuclear war between India and Pakistan. At the time, tensions were high between the two countries over the Kashmir region, and each was threatening the other with nuclear weapons. So the scientists imagined what would happen if a nuclear war actually broke out between them and 100 nuclear bombs were detonated. The results of the study were terrifying. The computer-generated scenario was as follows. First, black carbon and nitrogen oxides would rise into the stratosphere and start absorbing sunlight, heating up the entire layer. And of course, once a large amount of solar energy is absorbed, the climate on Earth's surface would begin to change. Whether it was summer or winter at the time, every region on Earth would become a cold winter, filled with clouds. The soil would turn into permafrost, where no plants could grow. But perhaps the biggest problem would be the radiation that would start leaking. When the stratosphere heats up and heavy gases accumulate, the ozone layer would begin to deplete, allowing ultraviolet rays to pass through. These rays would have a devastating effect on all living creatures. Even if the soil wasn't frozen and suitable for agriculture, crops would be damaged by the radiation. And this, of course, is in addition to the burns and cancers that would affect most living creatures. Even marine life would be affected by these rays, and most fish would die. This frightening scenario would continue to escalate for a period of 1 to 4 years. And after those 4 years, the effects would gradually subside. But they would still be harmful for a period ranging from 10 to 25 years. So, when you look at this terrifying scenario and compare it to our question, can humans survive a nuclear winter or not? You'll see that first, humans would need to survive the nuclear explosions that would cause the nuclear winter. Then, they would need to withstand the radiation and the effects of the nuclear winter, all while dealing with food shortages and widespread famine, since crops would be ruined and animals would die. Despite this horrifying scenario, according to this simulation, humanity wouldn't be completely wiped out. There are various reasons for survival, including factors like shelters and humans' ability to store supplies. Some people would be able to hide and have enough provisions to last them through those years, and they would eventually repopulate the Earth. But wait a second. The simulation we talked about was based on the expected results of 100 nuclear bombs exploding. Currently, the declared number of nuclear warheads in the world is 12,705. And that's just what's been announced. Maybe now the answer to our question has become much clearer. Despite its immense danger and the frighteningly high number of expected casualties, a nuclear winter is, in the end, a natural disaster, like massive volcanoes and earthquakes. Just like there are weak and strong earthquakes and volcanoes, the same goes for a nuclear winter. To know whether humans can survive a nuclear winter or not, we first need to understand exactly what kind of nuclear winter we're dealing with. Weak, moderate, or strong. Some scientists believe that the nuclear winter capable of causing extinction is the one that would result from explosions sending 150 million tons of combustion products into the atmosphere. To put that number in context, it would be a nuclear winter caused by a large-scale nuclear war involving at least 4,000 nuclear warheads. But others argue that these theoretical results can't be relied on because they don't take into account human awareness. These theoretical results don't measure how many of those who survive the explosions and radiation would have the necessary knowledge to act wisely in the new reality. Because in the case of a nuclear winter, everything would be different. Minor injuries and common illnesses like infections and diarrhea could be deadly if not prepared for with emergency medications. There should also be sufficient supplies of drinking water, food, and vitamins. And of course, there should be advanced planning to ensure survival in shelters far away from contaminated areas, which should be marked beforehand, like forests, caves, and mountains. That's why, in the 1960s, the American government established around 100 million fallout shelters, which were designed to protect people from radiation. The Russians did something similar, building shelters that could withstand radiation and even explosions. At the time, survival plans were being made everywhere, and this is one of the reasons why scientists and strategists have repeatedly emphasized the importance of having a survival plan. In conclusion, we hope that the insane leaders who possess nuclear weapons don't drag us into this dark scenario. But if they do, God forbid, we better hope they don't use more than 100 bombs. Even in the worst-case scenario, a nuclear winter caused by 4,000 warheads, humans could still survive. The situation wouldn't be good for sure, but there's a 99% chance we'd be talking to each other again, and we'd have a chance to rebuild society and fix what those leaders broke. And that's it. Who made it to the end? If you did, you're awesome. Give us a like before you go so we know how many of you stuck around. And don't forget to leave any episode suggestions in the comments. See you next time.